New couch. I'm actually quite sick at the moment. I'm going to make myself a spicy chai tea. As someone whose work primarily concerns epistemology, how we know things and what we choose to believe and so on, there is rarely a more frustrating event in public discourse than a high-profile murder. Everyone on the internet becomes Sherlock Holmes the moment a gun goes off. It sucks complete shit, and nobody is immune. People who step in to try and disprove misinformation frequently themselves start spreading comforting, emotionally easy narratives, and perhaps most upsettingly, everyone starts telling on themselves. What information you believe and repeat and choose to spread speaks to your motivations. And I'm sorry to say this, pals, but most people's motivations are bad. Let's start with the facts as we currently have them. Charlie Kirk was a podcaster, political speaker, and author who advocated for queer people to be beaten and stoned in the streets, for women and children as young as 10 even to be forced to carry pregnancies to term even if they were the product of rape, and for America to be a Christian theocracy. He called George Floyd, the black man famously murdered by Minneapolis police, a scumbag, said that black people and Jews were ruining America, and that public health measures were a Democrat plot against Christianity. He brought masses of people into the youth support of MAGA and Donald Trump, bringing the MAGA youth movement to completely unprecedented heights and ensuring that America's political future without serious intervention will be cruel, selfish, and fascist. He was, in short, a real piece of shit. A scumbag, even. On September 10th, 2025, Kirk was speaking at one of his regular college campus Prove Me Wrong events, in which he would encourage teenagers to argue with him about political issues and then use well-practiced sophistry to avoid engaging meaningfully with the topic, when a single shot fired from about 200 feet away struck him in the neck.
Is your boy out on TikTok? There was just a gunshot at Charlie Kirk. We're in Utah. There's a gunfire. This is not a joke. Hey, let's go. Hey, let's go. Hey, let's go.
Kirk was taken to hospital, and there died. The same day, authorities began to identify videos showing the shooter on a rooftop nearby and collected impressions of the shooter's shoes and palms. The next day, a hunting rifle matching the ammunition used to kill Kirk was found in a wooded area near the campus, and on September 12th, the FBI showed in a press conference a video in which someone, likely the shooter, runs across the roof from the point where the shot was fired, climbs down the building, and then crosses the road into the wooded area where the gun was found. Shortly after this, Trump appeared on Fox and Friends to say he was pretty sure they'd caught the assassin and brushed off questions about the existence of right-wing extremists. Immediately following this, the FBI held another press conference. Sorry to speculate in the middle of the facts section of a video about misinformation, but Trump made the way, right? Like, he wanted to go on Fox and Friends. He wanted the scoop. He wanted the ratings. He wanted to be the first to say it. That's just really what it looks like. Anyway, the FBI held another press conference saying that 22-year-old Tyler Robinson had been turned into the authorities by his dad, who claimed Tyler had confessed to him that he had been the shooter. They also stated the bullets recovered with the gun had engravings on them. The fired casing read, "Notices bulge, oh, what's this?" And the 3 unfired casings read, "Bella Ciao," "Hey fascist, catch, up arrow, right arrow, 3 down arrows," and "If you read this, you're gay, Lamau." So, it's been quite a ride so far, and as I record this, Kirk was shot 7 days ago. So let's get on to the bullshit. Within moments of the shooting, the first incorrect narrative started to form, as regular and notorious Utah protester George Zinn was apprehended by the police. Apparently, as soon as the shooting happened, Zinn shouted, "I shot him, now shoot me," to deliberately create a diversion so that he would be arrested and the real shooter could get away. The director of the FBI tweeted that they had a suspect in custody, but then they had to let him go, although he did get other charges. After it was clarified that Zinn was not responsible and he was released, the manhunt began in earnest. In the few hours after, with no information to latch onto, the online right started priming their audience for the narrative that the shooter would turn out to be a transgender and a radical leftist. On September 11th...
See how there's no windows on the side? And see underneath where there's like a pod thing? What's that, right? Take a look at this wreckage. See how there's no plane parts on the ground there? What does that look like?
A missile.
The FBI released blurry footage stills of a person of interest to social media asking the public for help, which prompted AI-obsessed right-wingers on Twitter to generate Blade Runner-style zoom-in-enhanced potential portraits of the shooter. They asked their computer to hallucinate them a suspect. Even in such a blurry image, there are certain elements that any human being would infer from this the machine instead fucks up. That t-shirt, for example, it's pretty reasonable to guess the design is an American flag with an eagle over it, but the AI thinks it's an abstract expressionist painting of the stars and stripes with alternately a gun or just some blocky shapes, or my personal favourite, outline of a guy flipping off the flag. From the circulation of these pretend pictures, the right wing started finding trans women they think look like what the AI thinks looks like the blurry still of the guy the FBI thinks might be the guy. Here, for example, Karen Lovejoy posted to Twitter that she thinks the enhanced picture of the suspect wearing a Kandinsky painting is an absolute dead ringer for some trans woman who said she doesn't like Charlie Kirk before. And here's George Papadopoulos, a man with 1.2 million Twitter followers, who incidentally received a Trump pardon for when he lied to the FBI, sharing it again with no indication that the suspect image had been altered or AI generated. This is just one example of many attempts to prove the suspect was trans that was circulating within 24 hours of the shooting. That same day, Steven Crowder, a man so secure in his masculinity he has to wear gun holsters to podcast, released a screenshot of what he alleged to be a memo from the ATF leaked to him by an ATF agent. The document claimed that the ammunition found in the gun used to assassinate Kirk had pro-trans and Antifa messaging engraved onto it. The Wall Street Journal and British newspaper The Telegraph reported on this, repeating the claim to their audiences. The next day, a source from the ATF spoke to Reuters, confirming that markings on the ammunition were currently under investigation, and an ATF agent speaking to the New York Times said that the claim about transgender and anti-fascist ideology was put out too hastily and may not be true. Following this, the Wall Street Journal has officially retracted it, and The Telegraph included in their piece that the agent who spoke to the NYT had urged caution, but kept the headline, "Charlie Kirk Killer's Ammunition Engraved with Pro-Trans Messages," the same. This is irresponsible reporting that will put trans people in danger. The problem is, until there was any more information about the engravings, it was entirely unclear what was true. The strongest position for the left to argue from in this case, against this narrative, is that regardless of who killed Kirk, trans people in America and other countries are in immense danger because of violent rhetoric that people like Kirk promote, and violence carried out on the behalf of their political project. The material answer is to organize to protect trans people and other minorities from the violence the right wing is aching to do and sees a justification in this killing to do. From the violence the right wing is already doing. Instead of arguing this, the claims were met with a flat denial. Here, we hit into misinformation on the other side of the Kirk assassination fiasco. Misinformation on the left. Someone on 4chan, truly a reliable source if I've ever seen one, found out that TRN is in the head stamp of some ammunition and concluded confidently and loudly that the investigators must have mistaken this for pro-trans engravings. TRN is the manufacturer's mark for Turan, a Turkish company, and the ammunition reportedly used to kill Kirk was a .30-06 round, which Turan does not make. Still, this became a viral post for leftists and liberals across several social media sites almost instantly. This one is annoying to me because it has the cadence of an untrue thing that people would like to believe, right? Like when someone claims the etymology of a rude word is an acronym for a popular phrase or something. Like, it's not that that never happens, it's just that it doesn't happen nearly as much as people claim it does, and it sounds fun. It's funny. It feels like people sharing this story around wanted to say that no leftist motivation could have been behind the assassination. I find this a bit peculiar. It seems to come from a fear that it would somehow legitimize the fascists' desire to punish trans people or leftists as a group for the assassination, which hopefully is self-evidently untrue. After the actual contents of the engravings was made public, this TRN story mostly died off, and as nice as it would be to believe that's because leftists are just better at correcting misinformation on our side, it's almost definitely actually because the spectacle was just beaten out by a greater spectacle. It was funny.
Notice his bulge. Oh, whoa, what's this?
In the day after the FBI press conference where Tyler Robinson's identity was announced, somewhere on the online right, someone found a picture of someone who looks like Robinson wearing a Salt Lake City DSA t-shirt. Investigators clarified publicly they knew the identity of that person, which they were keeping private for the person's safety, but they were not Tyler Robinson. This, of course, had little to no chilling effect on the use of the image. With Robinson in custody, police began interviewing his relatives and others who knew him, which itself produced more back and forth over whether he was a leftist or a good Republican boy or a groper Nick Fuentes fan. One person interviewed claimed that Tyler Robinson's roommate, who may be trans femme, was actually a romantic partner. This produced a massive backlash from well-meaning cis allies on the left, who said this was right-wing misinformation and couldn't possibly be true. This is the point at which, for me, things became probably the most frustrating, as the left side of social media insisted that use of memes necessarily indicates Nazism, and scrambled for more reasons to deny Robinson's roommate was trans, turning up nothing but inventing plenty. Someone, who was bored apparently, took an Instagram account with the roommate's name and clarified in their bio they weren't the roommate, which left posters took as evidence that the roommate story was completely fake.
The shooter was trans! No, that turned out to be a lie. There was pro-trans messaging on the bullets! No, that turned out to be a lie. In fact, it was a plausibly transphobic meme. The shooter has a trans girlfriend! Aren't you embarrassed? I think this is embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed. His own Instagram profile describes himself as a right-leaning Christian, but that Instagram profile also says not Tyler Robinson's GF, BF, or ITF. Does that sound like a left-wing trans person to you?
For the record, at time of recording, now this could still be proved wrong, but it seems that the roommate is in fact trans femme and was in fact in a relationship with Robinson the shooter. I am keeping their identity out of this video for what little good it will do, because they don't think they deserve more focus. At the same time that Andy Ngo and other MAGA creeps were poring over this person's social media for any evidence to compile in the narrative that they were trans and part of a radical left terror plot, left-wing users were also poring over their social media to find all the evidence they could that they were just a normal cis man. Do we see the issue here? Do we see what misinformation turns us into? Context around the shooting itself has exacerbated a lot of the dynamics of social information and misinformation. The FBI is arguably the most incompetent it has ever been, being currently led by Kash Patel, a QAnon conspiracy theorist who started a foundation to defend participants in the January 6th Capitol riot, and Dan Bongino, a sometime employee of Alex Jones on InfoWars, deeply involved in the development of crisis actor theories around the Sandy Hook shootings and the subsequent stalking and harassment of grieving parents of murdered children. The FBI is doing, not good.
Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. And why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
When talking about conspiracy beliefs and how they develop and propagate, it's always useful to think about authorized knowledge and stigmatized knowledge. Neither of these are inherently true or untrue, but authorized knowledge is backed up by widespread public belief. Institutions such as the state, academia, and investigative journalism, and ideally some kind of accessible and reproducible knowledge structure, like experimentation or sources. But not always, right? Like sometimes the state asks us to believe things it can't prove, like the effectiveness of trickle-down economics, or the existence of Greenland. Stigmatized knowledge is everything else from homeopathy to the Kubrick moon landing film, and crucially, whereas some authorized knowledge in the mainstream turns out to be false, some stigmatized knowledge that only exists on the periphery of the informational world is actually true. The Watergate scandal is a great example of something that the state wanted to be secret until it was proven through immense research and struggle, moving from stigmatized knowledge to authorized knowledge. But Nixon's election rigging scheme remained true and real the whole time. Likewise, the Iran-Contra affair moved from stigmatized knowledge to authorized knowledge, from conspiracy theory to matter of public record, through immense efforts by investigative journalists and some insider disclosure. However, the CIA flooding crack cocaine into black neighborhoods, is something that remained considered a conspiracy theory. It remained stigmatized knowledge, even though it's part of the same exact plot. That isn't to say it's true or untrue, just that it isn't authorized knowledge. The FBI heads being replaced by conspiracy theorist podcasters, and most of the competent investigators either being fired or quitting, is just a microcosm of a wider social phenomenon, both causing and being caused by the trend it can be taken as metonym for: the collapse of the mainstream, the dissolution of authorized knowledge. By building so much of their political project on conspiracy belief, by leaning so much on the support of conspiracy theorists and bigots, the Trump administration made their victory a guaranteed cataclysm for the realm of human knowledge, because to enforce their beliefs, to hide anything they find unflattering or inconvenient, they have had to turn the mainstream itself inside out. So you have Steven Crowder alleging that an ATF agent sent him a memo, the bullets had Antifa, pro-trans messages inscribed on them, and an ATF agent leaking information to a far-right conspiracy theorist bigot is not a ridiculous claim, because that's the kind of people who are in charge of the FBI. Those are the kind of people in government. That's the kind of person the President of the United States is. A fascist. At the same time, it feels believable to many that these goons would look at a manufacturing mark that says TRN and conclude that it was a pro-trans message engraved on the bullet by the shooter. Compounding the incompetence of the investigators,
What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects.
their willingness to share every new detail they find and their onlineness in general has also created a ripple in the already conspiracy-riddled right-wing informational ecosystem, leaving new gaps in knowledge by just dropping each new report or piece of evidence as they arrive, each new development itself giving an incomplete picture from which new stories evolve. There is a certain obvious sense in the idea that once facts are out, what people speculated before that point becomes moot, but I still find myself fascinated by the speculations. It has become far less important in our current politics what facts actually turn out to be than what people can be made to believe they are in the first instant after a story breaks, as these beliefs sink into the collective unconscious, the half-remembered reality that is comforting, and takes emotionally difficult direct confrontation to root out. And to be clear, the right has not simply absorbed this narrative passively in a half-remembered way. All the largest right-wing social media accounts are giving non-stop fuel to the narrative that a transgender terror cell planned the assassination. The people living in this unreality are motivated by cruel and morally abhorrent aims, and they are achieving those aims, while we point and laugh at how silly they are. The fascist is dumb. Har har har. Remember that time they thought the bullet said TRN on it? The fascist is so dumb. Har har har. Remember when they thought the roommate was trans? The fascists will make up anything. When you see people using intense motivated reasoning, it's incredibly naked what the motivations are. The right wing want to construct a reality where Robinson was driven by a transgender Antifa ideology so they can punish people they don't like for a thing they're mad about. They started making up a trans person to get mad at the moment the gun went off, and they've projected that shape onto various people since, regardless of reality. The motivations of leftists and liberals have also been laid bare in discussing this by the things that we choose to believe. From the moment Robinson's identity was made known, people have been speculating that he's a kind of online Nazi meme pervert called the Groiper, and although it may still turn out to be true, I guess, this seemed born out of a need not to believe Charlie Kirk was shot by someone who didn't like him because he was a fascist. Political violence of this kind, direct physical violence, tends to come in waves and be directed toward groups or types of people. Solo actors who choose extreme violence like this rarely have a wholly consistent worldview because most people don't really have a consistent, coherent ideological worldview. This is why, at time of writing, the discourse around his politics has completely stalled out, with the right insisting that him having a trans partner means this was the work of an elite transgender terror cell, and the left still just insisting there is no proof he's a radical leftist, which, yeah, I don't think he was ever going to have turned out to be one of the Puget Sound anarchists. Guys, he chose to assassinate a podcaster? He was always most likely to be someone terminally online. The interesting question here is really whether we're starting to see a wave of political violence against elites and against the far-right regime. The high-profile nature of attacks like this necessarily create a discourse around the person killed, and the flat refusal on most of the left to entertain the idea the shooting was an action taken against Kirk's fascist beliefs is an issue, because it leaves us unable to talk about what it would mean if that were the case. When this kind of discourse is happening, it's very frustrating seeing the left freeze in place. Like, yes, statistically, for a long time, most shooters in America have been far-right. But, honestly, from when it happened, I've been operating on the assumption that someone shot Charlie Kirk for being a son of a bitch. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if the bullets had more explicitly left-wing, anti-fascist messaging on them. I would not be surprised to learn the motivation was, plainly put, because he was a fascist. In insisting there was absolutely no possibility the shooter was a leftist, everyone became completely unprepared for the possibility they are. For years, the American right wing has used every outbreak of political violence to push forward their goals and publicly shamed and denigrated every victim of political violence who was more marginalized or more left-wing than Adolf Hitler. In response to the assassination, the left have been saying, alternately, it wasn't a left-wing shooter, they're going to use this as an excuse to persecute the left, and of course, har har, the fascist is so dumb. In response to the assassination, the right wing has been saying, kill trans people, kill trans people, kill trans people, kill trans people.
Enough is enough. And now I have to deal with real safety concerns. It sounds like the shooter was a trans or pro-trans.
Is this something that could be on the table with the speaker? Something to bring back mental institutions? I don't care what you call them.
We have to do something about this. We have to treat these people. We have to get them off the streets, and we have to get them off the internet. We can't let them communicate with each other. I'm all about free speech, but this is a virus. This is a cancer that's spreading across this country that's going to do great damage to normal, hardworking, law-abiding people.
I want the doors to start getting kicked in now. Now.
Talk to me about the efforts of the FBI to go after the funders of the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, the pro-open border protests in cities, and potential LGBT violence.
I want them arrested. I want them indicted. I want them tried for aiding and abetting in capital murder as accessories, and I want them to be given the lethal injection. I want them dead.
Okay, so now it's 8 days since Kirk was shot. It's become incredibly clear that this is going to be something people are sharing conspiracy theories about for a very long time. Candace Owens and the anti-Israel parts of MAGA are all going extremely hard on the Mossad did it, which is mirrored in a general plausibility discourse, which is like quite exhausting, just about like we don't believe any random guy could have taken a 200-foot shot, which doesn't make loads of sense, right? Because the rifle, Mauser 98, has an effective range of 550 yards, like 1,600 feet. Like, the 200-foot shot is well within that, and that's with iron sights, but the messages that they've released, and we'll get to the messages in a second, say that the scope was like a $2,000 scope. A $2,000 scope could get someone like 15 times magnification. It wouldn't be that hard a shot for someone who has any experience handling guns, and is completely baffling to lots of people who have no experience ever handling guns. As motivated reasoning tends to do in general, the plausibility discourse ignores all the inconvenient parts, all the bits of the plan where the shooter could have done very small things like wearing gloves to not leave fingerprints that like don't point to someone who was an extremely high-level trained operative having done this. At the same time as this, the right and left conspiratorial spaces are going very hard after the text messages that were released by the authorities, saying that they don't look real, that it's not how anyone who is 22 would ever speak, and I'm sorry, this is just a case of a lot of people looking at something too hard. Any conversation between people that you look at too intensely, trying to believe it could be doctored by someone will look doctored. And that's not to say I know with 100% certainty that the things that the state have put out are true. Do I believe that the FBI, the ATF, the Utah police, and so on could lie? Of course they could. They're cops. Cops lie. But that is the single best reason to believe anything false about anything that has come out from the cops is cops lie. Every other reason people have put out to try to back up this claim that it is a lie has been utter gibberish. And I am so frustrated because at the same time As all of this is happening, people are being doxxed and harassed and fired.
I was fired on Friday for saying that I was having a hard time finding empathy for Charlie Kirk.
Jimmy Kimmel has been a fixture on American TV screens for more than 2 decades, but his program has been pulled by Disney-owned network ABC without warning. It comes after comments he made about the shooting of right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk.
Yesterday at 5 p.m., I was fired from my job for posting a video saying I don't care about Charlie Kirk's death. In the video that I posted, I specifically said I wasn't celebrating it, but that I just don't care. And yet I was still fired from a job where my role was to increase educational equity to all students.
Clemson University says it has fired 2 more faculty members over inappropriate social media posts about Charlie Kirk's death.
One of the longest serving professors at Clemson University, Robin Newberry, who's making over 6 figures a year, posted this saying, in a world full of Charlie Kirk's and Brian Thompson's, the United Healthcare CEO, be a Tyler Robinson or a Luigi Mangione.
Misinformation is a term with a strange cultural usage, because what misinforms is not only claimed facts that can be disproven, but how facts are presented and people's opinions and what attention is put to which story or idea or claim. We usually mean it to mean individual claims of knowledge, but give a pass to personal taste or opinion. But the primacy of, for example, Charlie Kirk's death over the thousands of school shooting deaths in the US or the deaths of children in Palestine, this itself directs how people think and learn and believe things. From one point of view, the single biggest peddlers of misinformation since Kirk's death have been the liberal establishment, eulogizing him as if he was some broad church moderate centrist who brought people together. To pretend he was a person worth mourning is to legitimize his hatred, and when MAGA people do it, that makes sense. He was their boy. But when liberals do it, they don't seem to realize just how much damage they are doing. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom doing it communicates something else to people. It gives license to the right's response. In the wake of the shooting, it is unclear if the right-wing attempts to springboard off it into a full-scale anti-trans, anti-leftist purge of the US will really get anywhere politically, and so instead the right has gleefully embraced cancel culture, using posts celebrating Kirk's death as a basis to get people harassed or fired from their jobs. This sits at the intersection of the right-wing desire to punish and the social media war over the narrative, an epistemic retribution whereby they try to make it impermissible to speak ill of Kirk at all. We've been witnessing the canonization of Charlie Kirk as the first MAGA saint. The policing of speech around his death has been used to punish, in real material terms, the people who have celebrated an end to the vile filth that was his career. Gretchen Felker-Martin, well-known trans author, was fired from DC Comics where she was writing a Red Hood book, because in response to the news, she posted, "Thoughts and prayers, Nazi bitch," and "Hope the bullet's okay after touching Charlie Kirk." This is obscene. Trans people in the US are trapped in the country by anti-trans border policing as the state attempts repeatedly to take away their healthcare, their basic rights to access public life, and every shred of dignity they have, and Charlie Kirk bore a share of the responsibility for that. You may personally find it ugly to see anyone celebrating anyone's death, but we live in ugly times because of people like him. And at least some of the people most directly threatened by his politics are going to show that they are happy about this. Journalist Karen Attiah was fired from the Washington Post when right-wingers reported her Blue Sky posts that read, "For everyone saying political violence has no place in this country, remember 2 Democratic legislators were shot in Minnesota just this year, and America shrugged and moved on. Part of what keeps America so violent is the insistence that people perform care, empty goodness, and absolution for white men who espouse hatred and violence." Elon Musk, clearly scared absolutely shitless by the concept of someone killing a fascist for being a fascist, and then everyone being happy about it, has been using his wealth and his platform in service of the free speech purge. He has posted multiple lists of people's full names and jobs in attempts to have them fired en masse for celebrating Kirk's death. Gathering momentum from the public lists of Kirk haters, the online right has now set up a doxing website dedicated to harassing and firing people who say anything negative about him. This man wasn't someone who was open to civil debate on controversial topics. This was someone who demanded that everyone treat him in a civil manner while he says fundamentally uncivil things about other human beings. I'm gonna link Rebecca Watson's video here. She does excellent research and takes a very, critically minded approach to topical issues. And she has a great video for anyone who needs showing that Charlie Kirk said a lot of very ugly things. This is an ambitious push for informational dominance by the Trump regime, because it isn't just changing the content of the information shared, but the structure of information itself. Hating Charlie Kirk couldn't get you fired on September 9th. Free speech to these people has never been about the right to express different opinions. It has always been about their right to have their hateful, insecure, and petty demands taken seriously and enforced by boots, bullets, and bailiffs. Now it means the right to incite endless violence upon minorities and face no consequences. The state-backed right to be thought of as a reasonable moderate, to protection from other people feeling happy you are no longer a stain on our world. It is vital to communicate to the people trying their hardest to make it illegal to be glad the world is one fascist lighter, because their motivations are obvious. They want to know, no matter how they live their lives, they will be remembered positively. No,